Hello and welcome to this episode of the Kings of Garbage Time Football Podcast, where we help you sort through the garbage that is mainstream football analysis to become a more knowledgeable football fan and a better fantasy football general manager. I'm Zach Faria. I'm here with Omar Rodriguez and Colton Watson. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good.
I'm doing good too.
All right. Week 1 is in the books. All three of us here are very happy because our teams won. Our fantasy teams, not so much. Colton won. The other two of us did not. But what really matters is that our favorite teams won. Colton's Rams beat down the Bears as they should have. My Panthers poorly defeated the Jets as they should have. And Omar's Raiders, the game of the year,
yes, sir.
beat the Ravens in overtime. Omar, we'll get to our picks competition in a bit, but you and I were the only of us 7 to pick the Raiders. So obviously a little extra sweet.
Obviously, because we're we're on the episode more often. We're obviously the people with knowledge, right?
Yeah. Shots fired at Colton. So before we get to the picks competition and some of our other week 1 takeaways, we wanted to hit the fantasy football portion of the podcast first. Players that we saw either break through or on the verge of breaking through for the season. Colton, go ahead and start with you on this one. Any players you have that you want to throw out there to the people?
You mean like surprises or like what we thought?
Anything. Well, let's avoid established players. Let's go with something, guys that might now start to be regulars in the fantasy football conversation.
Well, just to victory lap a little bit. Zach Pascal, one that I pointed out a few podcasts ago as a sleeper, looks to be good. I don't know how much he'll do this week. Obviously, if he gets treatment from Jalen Ramsey, that could be a problem. But I think that he looks like the one. He's operating as the one, and that's very good for your fantasy team. And he was basically free. I'm sure a lot of people claimed him off of waivers this week.
Omar, throw it to you. Do you have anyone you want to throw out here in this discussion?
Yeah, this might be one that was kind of expected, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. Devonta Smith. I think he's going to be one of those players who we're going to expect to see just consistent what he put up this last week. Probably somewhere between 15 to 25 fantasy points a week, at least. I think he's just that player. He's going to be this year's Justin Jefferson in my eyes. I don't think it's too early to call it.
There we go. And I am 100% in on both of these guys, Pascal and Smith. I want to throw it to a guy that I own, a guy that I've always been pretty high on, is that Nahim Heinz. I know that's a pretty regular fantasy football name, but I think at this point he's a flexible player every single week. Last week he had 9 carries for 34 yards, and he had 8 targets, 6 receptions for 48 yards. This is going to be his thing. They just signed him to a 3-year $18 million extension. He's only 24. He's clear. Him and Taylor clearly can coexist in the same backfield. Nahim Heinz, along with Zach Pascal, are going to be the new 2 big weapons in Indianapolis. If you can get Nahim Heinz for cheap, do it now before he breaks out with a few touchdowns down the stretch. Colton, let's go back to you. Anyone else?
Well, I think we have to mention it. Elijah Mitchell. I'm not sure quite how that backfield is going to go. I know that there's some weird stuff with Aiyuk going on as well as Sermon. So I'm not sure what their plans are there, but him, and I also want to throw in Tyson Williams as another guy. I think we're mentioning this in the chat, me and Omar, that these 2 guys could be the next James Robinson. If I were to bet on any of these guys, it would either be Elijah Mitchell or Tyson Williams, or maybe no one, because James Robinson is kind of an anomaly. But if we had like how these comparisons happen every year, if I had a pick, I would be one of those 2 guys. Not sure quite how it's going to go with Sermon now, but obviously Mostert's out. Sermon should play this week. Fingers crossed, whoever owns him. and we'll kind of see how it goes. But Elijah Mitchell is a guy who has, pretty good profile athletically. He just didn't get the draft capital, which is a little bit surprising, but we've seen guys not get draft capital and still do good, a la James Robinson himself. So we'll see how that kind of plays out, but I'm really interested in see how those two guys handle. Tyson Williams just specifically looked a lot better than Latavius Murray, and they just cut Trent Cannon. I guess that's to bring up Bell. Bell is a little bit more interesting, I think, than Latavius Murray because it kind of messes with his passing game, but we'll see what happens.
Omar, anyone you want to add?
Yeah, there's one guy we kind of talked about a little bit in our sleepers episode, who I think we all were in on, is Jamal Williams. I think what the Lions are going to do there in their offense is going to try and win games is going to be enough for fantasy. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams both put up double-digit numbers, and not just double-digit numbers. They put up in the 20s. And on top of that, like TJ Hawkinson still put up crazy numbers. And so did Jared Goff, and that's a team that we weren't expecting to do crazy. So I think Jamal Williams is a solid breakout candidate this year. He got a lot of the carries, I believe, too, and he still got some passing. So he's somebody who I would say try to pick him up early right now before he gets crazy expensive later on during playoffs. So I think I'm going to say Jamal Williams.
All right. And I've got a few more here. Speaking of the sleepers episode, Darius Slayton, I was always bullish on as a guy. Obviously, they played the Broncos defense. Obviously, the Giants offense looked like garbage. But Darius Slayton had 7 targets. That was the second most on the team behind Sterling Shepard. Caught 3 passes for, I believe, 65 yards. Yes. They're not going to play the Broncos defense every week, even if you are down on the Giants offense after this past game. We will talk about the Giants a little bit later. But even if you are down on them after this game, they're not playing the Broncos every week. Darius Slayton is going to be able to capitalize on those targets. I think that's huge. I saw DJ Chark had 12 targets. They only connected with 3 because he hasn't had a lot of time to build chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, but I think that's noteworthy. Christian Kirk, who I was starting to think was going to just be a bust, is now playing slot, and obviously he likes it a lot better. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that's huge. As long as AJ Green is taking up space on the perimeter, Christian Kirk in the slot's going to be big. And of course, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about the big breakout receiver in terms of coming out of absolutely nowhere, KJ Osborne of the Minnesota Vikings. Let me read the Vikings target list for week 1. Adam Thielen had 10, Justin Jefferson had 9, and KJ Osborne had 9. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards. Someone's got to be the third wheel in that offense, in that receiving game. I don't see why it couldn't be KJ Osborne, especially with Irv Smith now out for the year. It's not going to be Tyler Conklin. So I think KJ Osborne is a guy who's going to be able to muscle his way into the flex conversation through the rest of the year.
I'm a little bit hesitant on him because we kind of saw like a third potential guy last year, Olabisi Johnson, I believe. He was getting hype as that third kind of guy, and I don't know what happened to him. I guess he's just not a factor anymore. So I definitely have to do more research into him, but he was one of those guys that I'm interested in, but not sure about what he'll do for the rest of the season.
I will say this. I pulled up their stats from last season. 43 targets for Irv Smith, 37 for Kyle Rudolph. So you've got 80 vacant targets there. I feel pretty confident in saying that most of those are going to now go towards KJ Osborne, with maybe a few sprinkled to a guy like Tyler Conklin. But that's just my opinion on it. But if you got an open spot on your roster, you might as well pick up KJ Osborne and see where it goes. So go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and before we leave the breakout candidates, one guy who I thought Colton was going to mention, so I didn't steal him, but he can feel free to add on more, is Brian Edwards. He definitely towards the end of the game was the most consistent catcher for the Raiders, and he was denied that touchdown. So honestly, I think we're going to see a lot more use coming from him. I personally thought he was going to get used more earlier in the game. I was sad to trade him, but I did it to make my team more competitive. But I think that he is going to be somebody who we're going to be talking about more and more this year.
Funnily enough, I was actually going to leave him for you. So I was going to bring him up if you didn't right now. But obviously another one of my sleepers. Feel pretty good about it. We heard over the off season about how he's Randy Moss and Tio combined and all this stuff. And while that's obviously exaggeration, he looked pretty good. Obviously it's kind of weird. He didn't play and he didn't really like have an impact until like 30 seconds of the last fourth of like the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. Carried it into overtime though, so you like to see that. Another thing I want to say though is I think that Brian Edwards was probably open a lot of times, and Derek Carr was just hyper focused on Darren Waller. I think that's kind of a factor because as soon as like Derek Carr looked at other spots, we saw that Brian Edwards was getting open a lot, making plays. So I don't know if it was just Brian Edwards not doing anything the whole game. What leads me to believe that happened is that Derek Carr was just hyper focused in on Waller. Waller, obviously, who is a good player, finished with like 20 targets. I think definitely Carr should start looking at Edwards way more, even if it doesn't look open. He's a jump ball kind of guy that can, play rough and get open. Unlike Ruggs, who is a completely different factor there as a like kind of stretch the field kind of guy. So I don't know. I'm very interested in see how he does. Definitely could finish as the Raiders wide receiver one. Obviously won't be the receiver one with Waller there, but as a wide receiver, I think he could finish as their one.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as a receiver, he's going to be more consistent as opposed to like Henry Ruggs, who's going to be maybe getting one like or two good plays here or there, not every game though. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
Ruggs is just like fitting into that kind of like John Ross territory where like I feel like the Raiders probably regret drafting him, but he's there, so obviously he's gonna be somewhat of utility. Probably not gonna return the first round draft capital he has, but could be a factor later on in the season as like he starts to develop even more chemistry with Carr. And
Yeah.
another thing I want to mention, I
Mhm.
started an Edwards watch, so every week Edwards gets yards. I'm gonna update it in the leagues that I own him as the nickname on Sleeper. So look out
There we
for that.
go.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking
Wait,
of,
hold on. Wait, Omar wanted to say something.
go
I
for it,
can.
Owen.
Well, I was just kind of going to mention that Edwards, he seems kind of like the type of guy who maybe can put up, I guess, like those, or not Edwards, Ruggs. If he was more consistent and got more yardage, he could be kind of maybe like a Tavon Austin type of a player. But I
Do
guess
you
that's
guys
just what I was
play him
thinking.
at punt returner?
I don't believe they do.
I would
No.
play him at everything at this point because it's looking like he's going to be a bust. So I'd play him literally anywhere you can.
Yeah, might as well
would-
get your money out of
How the
him.
Rams did with Tavon Austin.
I would say
Yeah.
what we've seen from Ruggs is basically, this is gonna sound bad, but I mean this in a good way because I am a Panthers fan. Is a lot of Ted Ginn, where he's just sort of taking the top off of defenses. We saw it in the Jets game last year when he caught the touchdown at the end of the game. We saw it in the Monday Night Football game in the fourth quarter. At one point, he catches one of those Derek Carr floaters about 40 yards down the field. You could see something like Ruggs making one or two of those plays every few games. Obviously, that wouldn't return that first round draft capital, but
Yeah.
it would open up that Raiders offense a lot more for Waller, for Edwards, and for Hunter Renfrow in the short game.
That's not a bad comparison. I don't know if that's his ceiling per se, but that's where he should be though. Like a couple
Mhm.
100-yard receiver guy with the potential to maybe develop into a Deshaun Jackson kind of role.
Mhm.
That's a little bit way too early to tell, but that's probably his ceiling is Deshaun Jackson. I wouldn't say that he's anywhere close to Tyreek Hill. Like obviously the comps were coming out, but I mean he's not done yet. He's a young guy,
No.
talent
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of the Raiders, our week one overreactions, the takes that we saw week one that we feel so confident in, we're going to put them here in stone. I'm going to start it off. I said in the offseason that I had some confidence that the Raiders could be a playoff team. I'm locking that in. The Raiders are a playoff team. I'm looking around the AFC. The Bills will probably still win the division. You've got the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens, who all look very good. Obviously, the Raiders beat one of those teams, but let's go ahead and put all of them in. Right? Yeah, let's do that. And then you got the Chiefs. That leaves a division winner between the Titans and the Colts, both of whom did not look good. The other one will be in the wild card race. And who are the other teams in the wild card race? It's the Patriots that lost to the Dolphins. It's
Chargers.
the Dolphins that don't look that good. It's basically going to be the Chargers and the Raiders at this
Depends. Do
point.
you have the Browns winning the division?
Yeah, because the Browns kind of look sloppy there
I
at the
mean-
end. They did lose that lead, a good
'Cause
lead.
if they're not winning the division, they're in the hunt for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, I'm just going to say let's put the Browns, the Ravens, and the Steelers all in. So that's 2 wild card spots out. That leaves one more. It's between the Raiders and the Chargers. And I've kind of held this point that I think the Chargers are going to be close this year, but not quite get there. This looks like the year the Raiders might get it. Now, I know they start off early. Maybe they fall off down the stretch again. But that defense looked a lot better, which is what they really needed. The offense looks fine. They got out to a bit of a slow start, but after that, they were fine. Josh Jacobs wasn't at 100%, and he still played very well. I think this is the year the Raiders get there. I think they got the defense for it now. I'm all in on the Raiders getting to the playoffs, probably even beating a playoff team. I think they go to the divisional round at least. Yeah, I'm putting that in stone right here on the podcast.
I like that.
I knew you would. Colton.
Well, I think it's a little early for myself to call it because my Raiders let me down for like the last 20 years. But
That's
I
fair.
think I like what
I
you're
don't
saying.
hate
I
it.
can see it.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, and let me go ahead and put my other one in stone real quick. I had the Vikings as a playoff team. They're done. I'm done with them.
Oh, nice.
That was abysmal. I don't consider the Bengals to be that good of a team. The Vikings should have handled them easily. That was ugly. I am
They
out
should
on
have
the
killed
Minnesota
them.
Vikings.
You know what? Then I'm gonna go ahead and say it too. I like the Niners a lot, but you know what?
They almost
They're-
lost to the Lions, man.
Exactly. Not only that, but like everything that's coming out of them being said, like what they're doing with as far as like Brandon Aiyuk and at the running back position, and I don't know. Maybe they're right. Maybe like it's talent in camp, that's making their decisions. But I don't know. They would it as far as what they drafted, what they're doing, and it doesn't look so
A
good
lot
to
of
me.
turnovers that game too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give mine. I really like the Cowboys actually. I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but the Cowboys actually looked really good against obviously the former Super Bowl champion from last year. And I feel like we should give them a little bit of credit. Obviously, defense hasn't looked great from them, but then again, they were playing basically a top 3 offense, so they obviously won't get an offense like that every week. So I'm really excited to see them against their own division. I think they should clean house against their own division. So that's 6 wins right there. And then whatever else they can pick up against the minor teams that they face, I think they can end up winning their division, obviously. And then I'm not sure about playoffs, what they'll do in it, but I have them going to playoffs pretty easily or more solidified now because I think when I think I have Cowboys as winning that division. I was a little bit more hesitant than that kind of like reinforcement coming from last week's game strengthened my opinion of that a little bit.
Omar, do you have anything?
Well, as far as to add on or something else.
Whatever you want. Anything you got.
Well, I think the Titans, like you said, did look like sloppy. I invested into Julio, and I don't know if that was the best decision, but he was kind of like added onto a deal. But I liked the Titans last year, and this year their offense did not look anything like they were playing last year, and they played pretty consistent last year. But I don't know. I think I don't think I'll set it in stone yet, but I hope they pick up the pace.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the games that I've seen since Tannehill started, that had to have been his worst by far. And the thing is that gives me a little bit of confidence, at least in him as a player, is that it wasn't really his fault. I think he still showed pretty good pocket presence and everything. If he didn't, there would obviously be a lot more sacks than what there was. I know Chandler Jones had 5. made the Cardinals defense look elite. But that's a product of the O-line. Taylor Lewan, one of those guys that should be solid, really stuck out as someone that just had a really bad Sunday. But I'm hoping that they can put it together. I'm a little bit nervous of starting AJ Brown this week, which sounds crazy, but obviously he got saved by a touchdown. So if he didn't have that touchdown, he had like 40 receiving yards. So
I was thinking about starting Devonta Smith over Julio Jones myself.
Yeah, and Julio obviously didn't have the touchdown, so he didn't look as good. And then also in one of my other leagues, I drafted Tannehill late, thinking I was getting a steal. A little bit rattled now, but I think I'm still going to start him this week and try to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm not really looking forward to seeing how that O-line holds up, especially if it played like that against the Cardinals, who do, I think we mentioned last week, have a pretty sneaky D-line. But I don't know. It's very concerning.
Yeah. I was the only one who picked the Cardinals in that game, and even I did not expect it to go there. that was pretty wild. But I do feel a lot better about my Cardinals pick for them to go to the playoffs. I think, you know what, week 1 overreactions, I'll go ahead and lock that one in stone too. The Cardinals are going to the playoffs. I don't think they win the division because obviously the Rams look exactly like we thought they would. But this Cardinals team looks very good.
Wait, do you have the Seahawks going in too?
We could literally see every team.
Honestly, right now,
the West.
I would go ahead and put all 4 NFC West teams in the playoffs. There is no other wild card teams that look all that impressive to me. It's the Falcons who lost. It's my Panthers who didn't look that good. I'm not picking the Saints being led by Jameis Winston for an entire 17-game season. And I'm not picking anyone from the NFC. I'm not picking 2 teams from the NFC East to get into the playoffs. So that leaves me with just the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Niners. So I'll go ahead. You know what? Week 1 overreactions. I'll go ahead and put that in stone too. The whole NFC West is making the playoffs. They're getting all 3 wildcard spots. Go ahead and give me it. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Here's my other overreaction to a player. Jameis Winston's going to throw 40 touchdown passes this year. 40 for 40. Let's do it.
You say that because he's eating crab legs every Sunday night after he wins?
He's eating good. I'll tell you that right now. And when Michael Thomas comes back, it's over, man. It is over.
Hey, you know, another overreaction I'm going to say right now then. Same team, and Zach was right. Jawan Johnson. He's going to be this year's Robert Tonyan. He's just going to get fed touchdowns. You know, he might not get all those crazy yards, but he's just going to get fed touchdowns.
I almost mentioned him in our sort of breakout players earlier, but I was concerned that pretty much all of his scoring was off those 2 touchdowns. But if Omar's going to do it, I'm going to take credit for it because I was the first one in our league in on Jawan Johnson.
I was actually going to pick him up, but I figured I already had way too many tight ends who are doing nothing.
I tried to find room for him.
I wanted him in the super flex, but you already picked him up.
I found room for him. The super flex, it was easy to find room for him. Our home league, not so much, but I did find room for him. I did stash him. And Troutman had 6 targets, I believe. So
I think he led the team, right?
Ideally, he might have, yeah. Ideally, those 2 could coexist in that offense.
They're going to do some weird Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst combo.
Right.
And that's another thing to talk about. Aiden Hurst looks like the tight end 1, but Kyle Pitts looks like the wide receiver 2. Just how he lined up. He lined up out wide most of the time. Yeah, so I think Gage maybe goes down and Hayden Hurst goes up.
Yeah, I'm going to lock that in stone too. I'm thinking Hayden Hurst is definitely one of the top 3 receivers on the Falcons. Not counting Mike Davis, who I think is going to get his own share of targets.
What about Corduro Patterson?
Yeah.
He had some targets too.
He looked like a beast, bro.
He had rushing carries too.
He had everything. Better than Mike Davis, even.
Not feeling
it. You're not feeling it, Mr. Krabs?
I am not. Speaking of, we talked about our picks competition. A couple I wanted to highlight. Omar is our current leader through week 1. He went 11-5. He lone wolfed the Bengals over the Vikings, which he won. Both of our split podcast picks, the Dolphins-Patriots game and the Broncos-Giants game, Colton and I each split those 1-1. Omar was on the right side of both of them, 2-0. Anything else stand out here among Omar's picks?
The Raiders, baby.
Obviously, the Raiders, who I was
The
also
Raiders,
in
that's a
on.
huge one.
So Omar, congratulations! You get to wear the crown for this week if you
thank
have
you.
one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't.
If you want to play with the filters like we were doing the other day,
There's a Halo one.
Find the crown. Yes, put it on your head.
You can
Yes,
go
do
ahead
it.
and do that. For the record, I'm gonna ask Simon to put our picks up on the board after week 1. But I am in second place. I'm 1 game back of Omar, thanks in part to my Cardinals pick, keeping me afloat. Colton is 8-8. He's 3 games back of Omar.
And that's exactly kind of what I expected. Took the safe route. I don't think I had any team betting wise that was slated to lose. So maybe I mix it up this week and try to spice it up a bit now that I have more knowledge on each team.
There you go, Omar, with the crown.
All right.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty nervous about week 2 because I feel like the gut picks are a little harder to make when you're basing them off 1 game sample size. I feel like week 1 is almost easier in a way because we sort of invest our energy into figuring out how we think these teams are going to play. And then week 1 comes along and we're readjusting all of them based on the 1 game. But that is what makes week 2 difficult. And that's where we get to the Giants and Washington. So I have 5 of the 7 picks in right now. They are all Washington, except for me. I'm taking the Giants. I'm rolling with them. I'm giving them 1 chance after the Broncos game. That's going to be a mulligan. I'm giving them the 1 chance. I'm taking the Giants over Washington. This podcast is going to go up after the game. We're filming this on a Wednesday. So I'm either going to look like a genius or a complete idiot. But I'm taking the Giants. I'm really nervous about Washington now that Fitzpatrick's out. I like Taylor Heineke, but obviously there's a bit of a difference between coming sort of completely out of nowhere for Washington last year versus now the Giants are game planning him for an entire week. The Giants defense is not bad. I think they were run a little tired by the end of that Broncos game just based on the fact that the Giants offense couldn't hold on to the ball. But this is a pretty decent Giants defense. It's a good Washington defense, so that's where the concerns are probably going to get me for the New York Giants offense. But if I picked the Giants to win the division, I got to pick them to win this game, at least until they prove to me that they actually just completely suck, and then I can pick against them the rest of the season. But I'm doing it. I'm taking the Giants.
Well, if I can add something, it's that Daniel Jones didn't look too bad, I guess. He had a rushing touchdown even, I believe. But other than that, their offense looks sloppy. It looks slow. But Washington football team is definitely a different team led by Taylor Heineke. He's got a different floor than Ryan Fitzpatrick does. But I think that we're definitely going to be expecting a different offense now coming from the Washington football team. So either way, I think it's not going to be a crazy big like win over the other. It might. I think it'll be close, but I think I do have the Washington football team winning in the end.
Yeah, this could end up being a pretty low-scoring affair. If I had to bet.
I think that would be completely possible. By the way, just while we're here on the podcast, we're giving free advice to the listeners about fantasy football and about NFL football. Let's give some advice to the Giants organization. Fire Jason Garrett. Just get it over with. We all knew that you never should have hired him in the first place. I know coaching and team building is difficult, but it's not that difficult. Please, for me, the man who put his faith in you in the offseason, fire Jason Garrett.
Get him out.
I agree.
Just to give my own opinions on it, obviously I went with Washington. Washington, it does concern me, like Zachary mentioned, with Heineke starting. And not that I hate Heineke either. It's just more of like, during the offseason that Washington was giving majority of the one time with Fitzpatrick as their starter. So it's a little different preparing when you haven't really developed chemistry with any of those guys yet, like Fitzpatrick should have over the offseason. So you got that mixed in with the fact that the Giants are totally horrible. Their defense, like Zachary mentioned, is kind of I don't want to say like good, but like pretty like they can do good in a pinch. They got some playmakers there. I don't think that Washington under Heineke is that huge of a threat offensively, unless he literally just like goes sicko mode out there, turns into like Steve Young. I think that Giants have a good chance to win here, better than they would have had Fitzpatrick started. Saquon, I'm a little concerned about. Obviously, everyone is. I think this week I'm actually benching him in my league, or in our league, because I think that they ease him back in again slowly. One league I do have to start him in. I feel pretty bad about it, but I mean, he's still Saquon at the end of the day. Just don't really know what the workload is going to be. And on the other side, I think that the defense of the Washington football team can carry them. And we should see. But yeah, I also want to take a small victory lap on Daniel Jones' rushing ability. I kind of mentioned that Daniel Jones has started to like rush a little bit. And if he continues to do that, I think that it opens up a lot for the team. I think even last week, I know with the hurt Saquon, he was still the team's like leading rusher, which is bad and good at the same time, especially since he's not Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray. But I think that opens up a lot and can make this game pretty interesting.
All right.
I definitely agree there.
Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just gonna say I agreed there definitely because I saw when I was looking at the quarterback stats for the week that he had gotten a rushing touchdown, and I had even seen the clip of it on Twitter. So
yeah, he's not scared to rush at all.
Yeah,
that's good.
All right, we're back. One more segment to hit. We hit our guys that we think are going to break out and stick around for the rest of the year. Now we're going to hit some guys that busted in week one that we think could be busting a lot more this season. Does anyone have one they feel super passionate about that they want to jump in on first? Or should I go ahead?
I'm just going to set one in stone. Because I just think this Dolphins offense is going to be different now. No more Mike Goseki. I think we were looking at him, and last year he looked good. But you know what? Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, Tua. I think there's not going to be any way that Goseki is going to be playing like hot. Like he'll be putting up somewhere between 5 to 10 points a week. Not anything like you really want to be looking for trades, I guess.
That was actually going to be my pick as well. Yeah.
All right.
Devontae Parker finished with 4 receptions. Jalen Waddle finished with 4 receptions. Myles Gaskin had 5 receptions, and now Will Fuller's coming back. Goseki, I mean, he should not be the guy you're relying on tight end this season. Don't cut him. I don't say cut him, but he should not be your tight end 1 this year.
I hate that so much. Goseki is such a good tight end too. He's like one of those guys that, you just throw out there, he catches a lot of passes. Is he going to do that this year? I think so. I think he's going to do that regardless.
Colton, do you have anyone that you want to put out there?
I don't have anyone passionate that I want to put out there. I just want to mention Mike Evans, who has really disappointed owners. I think, was he going before Chris Godwin in redraft? I don't know, but I would assume he would be, right? I would assume he probably did go ahead of Chris Godwin, and it looks like Chris Godwin is the one there. And second option might be Antonio Brown, which is surprising, but Antonio Brown looks like he did on the Steelers for the most part. So if that's Antonio Brown that's trotting out there on the field, then I don't know how much more is going to be left for old Mike Evans, especially when Gronk is actually looking good too, surprisingly. So I don't really know how that's going to pan out. I would be concerned as an owner. In Dynasty, I would say hold, because obviously you never want to sell anyone low. But I don't know. I'm kind of concerned about Mike Evans.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone I really think is a bust aside from Goseki. I'm not going to call him a bust yet, but I do want to raise the alarm about Mark Andrews, who was basically irrelevant in the Raiders game I pulled up the stats here. Sammy Watkins had 8 targets. He finished with 4 for 96. Marquise Brown, 6 targets, finished with 6 for 69. Mark Andrews had 5 targets and finished with 3 for 20. That's not going to cut it.
That's weak.
Lamar Jackson did not look like an intimidating passer against the Raiders. Obviously, he was running the ball very well, but it did not look like he was going to be throwing the football all over the field. That's going to be a problem for somebody. And on Monday, it was Mark Andrews. And I'm very concerned that could be a reoccurring issue for him. A guy who's basically consensus top 5 tight end. That could be a big problem.
You know who 2 guys I was low-key on this offseason, and I think I personally might be ready to write them both off just because they both have new quarterbacks throwing at them. It's both Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson. I think Curtis Samuel with Taylor Heineke, I don't like that. I'm just not a big fan of that. And as far as Robbie Anderson, I don't know. I just feel like last year he was getting a bunch of targets, And I just looked up I think he had 3 targets yesterday. Or not
One
yesterday,
was a
Sunday.
touchdown, right? So that helped a little bit.
He did have the long touchdown.
But I could definitely see that as Terrence Marshall, kind of comes up more.
The usurping of Terrace Marshall.
Well, let me pull up the stats here because I don't think Terrace Marshall was particularly relevant in that game.
I don't believe so.
He had 6 targets but finished with 3 for 26. Yeah, I'm not willing to write Robbie off as a Panthers fan just yet. But it definitely looked like that offense was still ironing out the kinks with Sam Darnold at quarterback, and obviously a bit of turmoil at offensive line with John Miller being put on the COVID list before the game, and then his replacement getting hurt during the game. That was obviously a bit of a problem.
Well, I'll mention. I don't know if anyone was going to mention it, but I'll kind of mention the hard one. Saquon Barkley. Is anyone concerned about him or what he's doing? This is in the context of a redraft, obviously. So, kind of seeing him not perform and getting only 10 touches is pretty concerning, especially since he's had a full year to recover from the ACL. But maybe they could be easing him back in. But even then, the offense doesn't look great. Bad O-line. Daniel Jones, not great, mediocre, but not looking good for him, right?
Yeah, I took him in one of my redraft leagues and I was definitely disappointed, but I'm not ready to write out Saquon. He put up a lot of crazy games in obviously healthier seasons, but I think that he's definitely probably just being more careful. It is the first week back and there's already been a bunch of injuries to people who we would have never expected, like Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins. So yeah, I think they're better safe than sorry,
Yeah, this is it's very premature to say this, but I watched a game obviously as an owner, and there's a lot of times where it was the O-line's fault, but there was some times where Saquon just didn't hit the hole like he was supposed to, or how he would have in the past, or hit the corner. And I don't know if that's just his hesitation or not, being rusty, but definitely something to look for this week. Obviously sucks though, because it's a quick turnaround. He doesn't have the full week to prepare. So I think we probably see him getting limited again and then maybe ramping up in week 3, which I should be confident to start him in depending on how this week goes. But I don't know. Something to monitor.
Speaking of concerns, I'm going to read you guys out a list of targets. Noah Fant, 8 targets, Jerry Jeudy, 7, Tim Patrick, 4, KJ Hamler, 4. Anyone missing from that list?
Yeah, Sutton.
Cortland Sutton, 3 targets, tied with Albert Okwuegbunam and Melvin Gordon. Maybe Judy's injury puts Sutton back up that list, but it's a Teddy Bridgewater offense. I think people don't really realize how much of an anomaly last year was with Joe Brady at the helm, where all 3 of those Panthers receivers were eating. I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to replicate that. I don't think their offense is really built to replicate that. They have Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. Melvin Gordon especially looked very good. Javonte Williams had more carries than Melvin Gordon. They obviously would have leaned on both of those running backs. Cortland Sutton could be in danger down the stretch, I think.
I would be more concerned if Judy didn't get injured.
Yeah, I do
Obviously,
agree.
Judy being out 8 weeks gives Cortland Sutton plenty of opportunity to show that he's fine. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really watch the game, so I don't know quite what happened there. But what did he have? Like 2 points in a PPR, like one catch or
He had
something.
catch for 14 yards.
So not great, obviously, and people drafted him to be sometimes their wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. So a guy that should be starting in our lineup that's putting up numbers like that is obviously always concerning. A la Aaron
Julio
Rodgers, Adams, even who's the one. Those guys we're pretty confident are going to rebound, right? Rodgers and all those guys, but yeah, I don't know. Something to monitor again. A lot of stuff that happened week 1 that we just don't really know yet. And there's so many factors that could be at play. Bridgewater, though, looked decent. I mean, he looked better than I expected. So,
but he didn't look
we'll
like
see.
a fantasy quarterback, which for the purposes of this segment,
that's true. But, a quarterback could have a bad week, but in PPR, a receiver could have a really good week. It just depends on who the targets go to. That's why I'm still pretty high on Fant. But we'll see. I mean, plenty of opportunity. A guy that we should have mentioned probably earlier that could rise a bit is KJ Hamler. So I don't know. We'll have to monitor it again.
Yeah, I'm still a Tim Patrick believer. And I think, he played pretty consistent after Judy went down. Like the rest of the game, he
had a touchdown, right?
Yeah, he caught a touchdown.
I know those are a little random, but you love to see it when it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
And one more. I'm going to plunge the knife a bit into Omar's heart here after hyping up his Raiders. Gabriel Davis is clearly the 4th wide receiver on the Buffalo Bills. It looked that way for most of the offseason. It looked that way in Sunday's game. Probably don't have high hopes for Gabriel Davis the rest of the year.
He caught a touchdown though, right?
He did catch a touchdown, but he is clearly the 4th guy in that receiving core, which in a team,
I'm not ready to write him off yet.
On a team like the Bills that can throw the ball around, that can be manageable. But he's clearly the 4th guy. If he didn't get that touchdown in the Steelers game, he would have basically been irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot more of that unless someone like Emmanuel Sanders goes down and lets him move up the depth chart.
Yeah, well, Emmanuel Sanders' injuries haven't been the best like the last couple seasons, so I'm not ready to write off Gabriel Davis just yet. I would say hold him if you have him, but yeah, he's not somebody who I'd be throwing in my flex right now if you have other people who you can.
Yeah, and of course, we probably should mention Brandon Aiyuk, who either one of you guys want to take that one?
It's just weird. I mean, I can speak on it. Obviously, we don't really know anything, but I can speak on what I've seen. It seems to be a mixture of the hamstring, but not only the hamstring. Kyle Shanahan, I've saw videos of him, so this isn't taken out of context of him saying that Sherfield is playing better than him, which is I don't know if that's because of the hamstring or not, but he seemed to imply that it was happening all camp. So I don't know how the beat reporters didn't report on this at all. I don't know how we didn't hear about this, but it's just a weird situation. I don't know if he broke a team rule. I think at this point, if he broke a team rule, though, that he'd come out and say it, right? Or do coaches not have to reveal that? Just seems weird.
Mean, even like Michael Thomas, when he got in trouble last year, they went out and said it,
Yeah, the teams usually aren't afraid to say, oh, this guy broke a team rule, so I punished him. But it doesn't even seem like it's a punishment. It just seems like he's literally thinking that Sherfield is better than him, which is just mind-blowing because Aiyuk on most people's boards was finishing as high as like the wide receiver 13, 14, 15 range. And when you have a receiver who's borderline wide receiver 1, not even playing, really, it's concerning. And one thing I did see that is kind of concerning again, just to point that it could be something more than just a hamstring, is that I saw a tweet saying if it was just a hamstring, why did they play Brandon Aiyuk at punt returner? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Same with Sermon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just confusing, to be honest.
Yeah, Brandon Aiyuk, 26 snaps in the Niners game against the Lions. No targets. Trent Sherfield played 27 snaps with 3 targets. Mohamed Sanu played 20 snaps and got a target.
He's still on the team?
Yes. And apparently he's ahead of Brandon Aiyuk on the pecking order right now. So, yeah.
Something's going on there. Definitely M God. Actually, I have him in that last league that we joined, that ESPN league.
Yeah, people
Well,
drafted him high. Like,
yeah,
what did you draft him as
I
your
think I
wide
want to
receiver?
say
What?
I think he was my first backup flex. That's why I drafted him. I think probably like around 7 or 8, probably.
And you probably got like that's considered probably a steal on him at that
Yeah, yeah,
ADP because he was going as like people's wide receiver 2.
yeah. I got him as
So
like my probably
could
wide
be,
receiver
and
4.
if you waited like in a regular league, he could have been your wide receiver 1 realistically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says here Omar drafted him 55th, so that's fifth round.
In the
Yeah,
10
it's
man
like
league,
wide
yeah.
receiver 2 range. So and that's a 10 man. So think about a 12 man.
Mm-hmm.
So could be someone's 1, high end 2.
Oh, so
Mhm.
it would have been the 6th round, yes, in the 10 man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One that I also wanted to throw in is Zach Moss. Hyped up in the offseason, and then like Sermon,
Guilty.
didn't play at all. So
Yeah, inactive behind of all people, Matt Breida, who
yeah, not good.
who couldn't even get on the field for the Dolphins at the start of last year after they traded for him.
But for
Yikes.
for Zach Moss, I'm more confident in than even Ayuk standing because he was outplaying Singletary all offseason, and for him to be a healthy scratch week 1 leads me to believe that he did break some kind of team rule or something. And he's being punished for that because you even put the tweet that Zach Moss is apparently having a good week this week, according to the coach. So I don't quite know exactly what's going to happen with him, but I think I could foresee a bounce back. If not, then I don't know. That backfield is still like garbage anyways, but he was
Mhm.
supposed to be like the king of the trash pile per se. I just don't know
Yeah,
quite what's going on there either.
At this point, it's funny because we always talk about the Patriots running backs as you can never really trust any of them since LeGarrette Blount left. Damian Harris right now at this point, even with his fumble at the end of the game, I would trust him in that Patriots backfield more than the Bills, more than the Buccaneers,
More than
and
the
even more than
Jets.
the Niners,
49ers.
more than the Jets. Crazy that
Did
we
you
would ever
mention the
say that.
Texans? Or do
Mark
you?
More than the
Ingram did
Texans.
decent.
That is a good point.
Dude, David Johnson
Um,
would have been irrelevant if it wasn't for that touchdown he had. He had like
Well,
3 carries and like 3 catches.
Lindsey had a touchdown too, and he was pretty much irrelevant.
So
I
many
mean,
mouths to feed in that
Danny
backfield.
Amendola had a touchdown. The Texans week 1 is definitely an anomaly. They're not going to be playing the Jaguars every week. They won't play them again, so that'll be fun. But other than
I think
that,
I would try to target whoever the pass catcher is. I don't think that's going to be Mark Ingram. I think it might be David Johnson.
He only had 3 targets and one of them was a touchdown catch.
Well, they were winning, so it was kind of.
Yeah.
But like Zachary said, they're not playing the Jags every week, so I think they should be getting blown out unless Tyrod somehow manifests like a really good season somehow. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
Grab a pass catcher.
that is all I have. Oh, Kirk Cousins. I'm going to call him a bust too.
Nice.
I give
He
up.
was decent, I think.
Yeah,
I give
I don't
up.
know. It's Kirk Cousins. I feel like
I don't
he might
know.
bounce
He had
back.
3 touchdowns. Do you have a lot of picks? I don't know. I just know his end
I
season
don't know. Let me
totals was
check.
pretty good.
Let me check the stats here. But I believe what did they put up, like 17 points against the Bengals?
He put up like 25 in my ESPN, which is 5-point passing TDs, which isn't terrible.
Oh wow, he had 22 in our league. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
he
I take
wasn't.
it.
He
Maybe I
wasn't
take
bad.
it back. I'll take it back.
Yeah.
You just don't
we'll
like
take it.
Kirk Cousins, Zach. Just say it. Just
I
say
am
it.
out. I am
Even-
out on Kirk Cousins as an NFL quarterback.
To be fair, even the Vikings don't like him, so
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but the Vikings don't even like the Vikings, so
that's true.
Yeah.
That
So
is
he's
true.
fine. He's fine as your fantasy quarterback. He's a dud. If you're a Vikings
QB2.
fan, I'm sorry, but yeah. That's all I got. You guys got anything else?
No, not particularly.
yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Another podcast in the books. We will keep our podcast picks competition going. We haven't made the rest of our week 1 picks outside of Thursday's game. Obviously, this podcast will go up after Thursday's game, so we can see if the Giants make me miserable or not. But we'll see how it goes. Omar is leading the way. Can he hold on to that? I don't think so because I'm right behind him. But it is what it is. And shout out to one of the people on our podcast being team. I'm not going to name him just because he's not coming on to defend himself. But one of our 7 went 3-13 in week 1 in his podcast picks.
Nice.
I'm not going to name who it is, but we might tweet out the graphic later when this episode is posted. But yeah, so that was fun.
And that was bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you get when you pick the Jets over the Panthers, but it is what it is.
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
if you're a fan of the podcast, you would know that the fan of the team he likes in the NFL would kind of make it an easy guess.
That's right. That's right.
All right, another podcast in the books. I will see you guys next week after my Panthers probably get destroyed by the Saints, which will be fun for me. Omar's Raiders play the Steelers, which is going to be fun for him too after what the Steelers did to the Buffalo Bills. And Colton, let me pull up who the Rams play here. The Indianapolis
Colts, I
Colts.
believe.
Yeah, so screw you, Colton, with your easy schedule. But
that could be a tough game. You never know.
Shut
No,
up.
Matt Stafford was looking nice out there.
That's true. It do be like that.
All right.
Mhm.
I will see you guys next week.
All righty.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Adios.
Oh, yeah. Make sure subscribe to the channel and follow the podcast on
The
Twitter at
buttons.
GT. I don't know who is in charge of our Twitter account, but that person might be tweeting out the graphic of our podcast picks for week 1. So if you do want to see who went 3-13, make sure you follow the account at Kings of GT on Twitter. All right. See ya.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Laters.